Welcome to Politically Incorrect. I think we have a very special show for you tonight. We have 4 college students who have very, very, I would say, opinionated points of view on the Middle East, and I don't think I'm going to have to encourage them too much to bring them to the fore. Over here we have Shoshana Javahari. Did I say that correctly?
Javahari.
Okay, pretty close. California State University at Northridge, majoring in political science, and founder of an on-campus pro-Israel group. Welcome aboard. Okay, Amer Zahr. Okay, graduate student at the Center for Middle Eastern and North African Studies and a writer for the Michigan Daily. Jacob Zachariah.
You got it.
Pretty good. Okay, political science student at UCLA, active in the Hillel Center on campus. UCLA is here, in the house. And Jawad Issa. Okay, you are at Georgetown University, and you are a graduate of Seeds of Peace, which you may have seen on various news organizations. They profiled this a few years ago. It is a group that brings together children, high school kids, sometimes younger, in regions of conflict, tries to get them to understand each other so that the cycle of violence can be broken. We hope we'll help break it tonight and not continue it. Give a hand to this panel. So, given the recent state of escalated violence in Israel and the West Bank, let me ask you this question, because a lot of people are saying now that the Palestinians really do not want to live in peace with Israel. What they want to do is annihilate them. There are 280 million Arabs that surround the state of Israel. There's 4.5 million Jewish Israelis. Now, we all know that the Israelis could annihilate the Palestinians if they wanted to, militarily. They have the bomb. Even if they didn't use the nuclear bomb, they could do it with conventional means. They've never done that. Flip the script. What if for 1 hour, one crazy Sadie Hawkins hour, the Arabs had the ability to annihilate the Jewish state? Do you think things would be different? Do you think they would show the restraint that Israel has for
each other? Look, I think the question you asked rests on a couple faulty assumptions. First, you assume that Israel is showing restraint, or that Israel would not like to get rid of the Palestinians. I think that the policies that Israel's been undertaking for the past 50 years have been policies that are meant to get rid of the Palestinians. Housing discrimination, demolition of houses throughout the West Bank, confiscations of land. These are things that are like a slow ethnic cleansing process.
Okay, they're slow. Let's ask the question again. If it was fast, if the Arabs had the ability, which they do not, to annihilate, you say that they would not.
They've tried many.
What about it? Why would they oppress them?
Look, I don't doubt that a few Arab dictators, and all the Arab leaders are dictators, I wouldn't doubt that a few of them would try to put together armies like they have in the past and try to get rid of Israel. They can't. I also don't doubt that there's anything that is a moral factor that's stopping Israel from doing the same thing to the Palestinians. They simply couldn't get away with it. No nation state, probably today in the year 2001, could get away with annihilating a couple million people. It would probably be the end of the Jewish state.
Because the whole world... There are so many people who seem to be willing to strap on dynamite and walk into a pizza parlor.
Because they're living under... look, let's first make clear, right, that sometimes we talk about this, about the whole Israel-Palestine thing, and if somebody didn't know any better, they might think that there's an Israeli state and there's a Palestinian state and they're fighting with each other. This is not what's going on. We're talking about an Israeli government that has a state and is occupying a whole Palestinian population.
Not true.
It is true, unless you count
not by any legal means of the word occupy. Occupy refers to a state that was already there. When the Nazis took over Poland, they occupied it because there had been a Poland. There had never been a Palestinian state. There had been an area of land called Palestine, where Arabs and Jews both lived. So if you want to talk facts, and in 1947, when the UN mandated that they would split that land, the Arab reaction was, "Niet. We would rather annihilate you." The Arabs doubled down. They said, you know what, we'd rather take our chances and try to get the whole thing. And they did nothing but lose half the land.
Actually, it started in 1937 with the Peel Commission. They got offered statehood back then as well. And back then, there was no Jewish majority, there was no Israeli majority, and they declined statehood back then.
So why is it occupied?
Well, because every international legal organization has said that it's occupied. The UN calls it occupied. If you need more than the UN to call it occupied, then we can use your definition if you want.
Oh, I do. The UN just was at the conference for racism, and the UN associated Zionism with racism, and that was it too.
Well, Zionism.
So,
Zionism is racism. Zionism
Really?
is inherently has to be racist.
Well,
Let me finish.
Why?
Like most nationalist ideologies, I'm not to put Zionism in a unique way. Like Zionism as Israeli nationalism or Turkish nationalism, any other kind of nationalism that say you need to be of a certain ethnic or religious background to get certain rights in our state. Okay, that is how Israel works. In Israel, 1 million residents or citizens of Israel, we're talking about Israel, not the West Bank and Gaza, are Arabs. Their rights, they can do things like vote and whatever, but their rights as far as living as an equal member of society are much less because they simply are not Jewish.
Yeah, but they're greater than they were when they lived under Arab rule, aren't they? I got to take a break. We'll come back to that in a second. All right, we're back here with our 4 students, and since we have students, I brought in a visual aid. Professor Maher has a map here. Can you push in closer on that map? Because let's show what we're talking about. Okay, now here's Israel, this little bit of land. Okay, thank you. That's Shalom Aleichem. Here's Syria, here's Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Egypt, Sudan, Libya. Look at all this. Now, the Arabs purport to be brothers. That's what we always hear. It's one Arab nation divided into falsely drawn countries by the colonial powers. If this whole bit of land are all brothers, how come at the time of the partition, when they refused to share the land with Israel, and there was only 600,000 Palestinian refugees, how come they couldn't find any home in this whole area? Look at the little area that they want.
Can I answer that? Can I try?
The little area. Yes, please.
Okay. Now, while Arabs, and I believe we as Arabs do have common threads that keep us together from Morocco to Iraq, but just like we as Americans have common threads that keep us together from California to New York, you live in California. If some foreign military power came into your house and kicked you out, would it really be justifiable for them to say, well, you're an American, just go live in Arizona, or just go live in Oregon? They're Americans like you want to live in your house.
That's not an accurate analogy. Again, when the partition was there, who negated it? Who said, no, we do not want to share the land. We would rather take our chances trying to get it all. I've just answered that question.
I'll answer that question, okay?
Who?
The answer to that question is, unfortunately, that there probably is no real answer. Because there have been... Let me finish.
You're just evading the question.
Because there have been historians, Palestinian and Israeli, who have argued both parts. And there is actually a big class of historians coming out of Israel now that call themselves the new historians, who have said that Israel was the state that decided that they didn't like the partition plan. So, that doesn't mean... It's true. So that doesn't mean...
That's so not true.
No, it is true. It is true.
How about the Oslo Accords of 1993, where they were once again offered to have their own statehood? The Palestinians were offered to have their own statehood.
Last year, were not offered statehood.
Last year they were offered statehood.
You're doing it, remember? Talking at once.
Last year they were offered statehood. They've been offered statehood repeatedly since the
They lived, most of them, in the West Bank that Jordan controlled for those 19 years. Why didn't Jordan, an Arab country, declare a Palestinian state on the West Bank?
Because
how did those territories?
He was a monarch. He was a dictator. He wasn't interested in giving up land. No, you're not.
Thank you.
You're not going to get any. You're not going to.
A little wisp of truth.
I don't think.
So where's the brotherhood in that?
That's fine. Nobody can defend. I don't think anybody can defend the actions of Arab rulers. Okay. I think though we should disassociate that with the sentiments of Arab people, what they would like to see happen. People live in countries in the Middle East where they simply have no power on the ground, right?
Including Palestinian areas.
Sure, fine, yes, the Palestinian leadership is just as corrupt as any other leadership. That's all fine and dandy. We can talk about how people hate each other. We can talk about how a Jew kills an Arab or an Arab kills a Jew. We can talk about that probably forever and fill up 1,000 politically incorrects. But in the end, when you take it all away, you wipe away all this rhetoric, you have a land, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, that are occupied illegally according to international law. And when we talk about concessions, I think that we should talk about concessions not as Israel conceding something. We should talk about what Israel is required to do under international law, which is to leave the West Bank, leave the Gaza Strip, and allow Palestinian refugees to return to their homes.
How did those lands become occupied territories? How did they become occupied?
Well, we already went over how they became occupied. They lost them in a war. When they tried, you lost it in the war. You had 4 wars. You tried to do it 4 times. Every time you lost. And now it's like, okay, we're the victim.
Do you think Israel wants to be there right now? Do you think Israel wants to be there and fulfill the duties of the PA? That's what they're doing right now.
Wait a minute, if Israel doesn't want to be in the West Bank, why are they escalating settlement activities day by day?
You said you wanted to say something about the suicide bombers.
Yeah, I think we have to make an important distinction when we talk about the suicide bombers. Now, first you have to decide what is legitimate resistance, what is illegitimate resistance. You have Palestinians living under occupation. They are, in my view, and the view of many other scholars, that they are allowed to resist the occupation. Now, blowing yourself
by killing
up,
civilians.
No, just let me finish.
I'm asking.
I'm saying no. Putting a bomb onto yourself and walking into a bus station or a club, to me, is a completely illegitimate form of resistance.
Certainly a club.
I'm saying anywhere where there's civilians. Anywhere where there's civilians, it's an illegitimate form of resistance. But that doesn't mean that you cannot sympathize with the sentiments that would push somebody to that level. In other words, I can say, a Palestinian living under occupation, I see his or her life, and I see what kind of things to push them. And I can say at the same time, they were completely
wrong. It's not so much pushing them right now. It's the great life that they're promised afterwards.
72
That's what it is.
Because
this is kind of a thing, something that a lot of people say that shows, I think, a complete ignorance of Islam
there's something wrong
and
with my life here.
of their